Ivy, could you give us an example of one of your most difficult domestic abuse cases?
Oh, okay, there have been so many, because we've been around for almost 30 years. We were established in 1982. With Women's Aid Organization, as you know, we have a shelter, a refuge, and one of the most sort of traumatic experiences will be, and very stressful for social workers and the staff, will be when the refuge address is compromised, because the women come there knowing they can be safe and protected and in a sense hiding away from the perpetrator. We had a very difficult case of a Bangladeshi woman who was married to a Malaysian Bangladeshi relative, in fact, and she had gone through all kinds of abuses. She had a son who was at that time 7 years old. She was also pregnant, and for years she endured the pain, and she tried to leave the house, but she could not leave the house. And he would it was not just the husband, it would be the mother-in-law and the father-in-law, and belts were used. This would tear up her clothes and cut her clothes, and it was very traumatic for her. She finally got hold of her father, who lived in Bangladesh, and he came back and he tried to take her back, but they were stopped at the airport. Our social workers were there with her, so we brought her back to the refuge. And we realized that it would be very dangerous for her to live at the refuge, because he was very well connected. The very fact she was stopped at the airport. He managed to get a court order to get the child. So he turned up at the refuge, but of course by then, part of our protocol is once we know that the person is in terrible danger, we take it to a new place, a new address where even some of us don't even know where that is. There's only very few people will know where she's hiding. But the police turned up with the husband. He brought along the police, the court order. And of course, we are so well trained. We know that the court order must be very specific. It's only when she violates a court order that's when you get the police help. But this was a Sharia court order, which was worded a little differently, and it named Women's Aid in the court order to say that we should not be a halangan, we should not obstruct, the officer from conducting his work.
That is frightening.
It was very frightening, because the police came with just not one policeman, but lawyers and at least a patrol car, and two of the policemen were actually holding rifles, and waiting outside the gate. Now, it is not only just frightening for us, but it was also very frightening for the refuge residents, because the police are people who you need to trust. You need to sort of say they're going to protect you, and here they are with rifles and policemen trying to take a woman away.
On the other side, so to speak.
Yes, right. But one of the good things about, no matter how traumatized and how afraid we are, we do not show fear. My team, it's an amazing team. And we just said, no, you're not going to come in. This is actually a shelter, a gazetted shelter. You can't come in. So he kept coming back. The father-in-law, the husband, he kept coming back, and each time with the police. And we would then make counter police reports. We had to make a police report. We had to call up the CPO of the PG police station and say, come and give us protection. And it was very, very scary for her. She had to go into hiding, and basically she had to go underground, and took a safe journey out of, not safe, but a rather dangerous journey out of the country. And, when women have to leave the country under this kind of circumstances, it becomes very, very difficult for us, because, if she's caught, if she's stopped at the border or whatever, but we felt that it was important for her to leave, because, she couldn't be living with this man anymore, because he was almost insane.
What I always wonder is, for women in situations so difficult, how do they make the first step? How do they make the first step to get in touch with you?
Always through a friend. Usually the number of references come through friends. Sometimes the police themselves bring women to the shelter, welfare officers, other NGOs. But I think more interesting is that why would she want to what makes her want to leave, and that may take for many years until she realizes that she cannot handle this kind of abuse and humiliation, and a realization that actually, no matter what she does, he's not going to change.
And that she deserves better, of course.
Of course. The self-esteem is really whittled down by the time, they arrive at the shelter. But, but it's a community of women, and this is why we do our work. We basically help her recognize that she's got a lot of strength. The very fact that she had the strength to even endure that pain is in itself, a positive thing, that she was able to find that. So now you channel that strength into being free from this kind of violence.
What are some of the inefficiencies that you've seen in the legal system in terms of aiding victims of domestic abuse?
Well, for instance, in this particular case, I think when a husband goes to the police and say that I want to see my wife or I want my child, and there are already many police reports made to say that he's been abusive. There's been a court order to say that he has to stay away from the wife. Then it becomes very difficult. And as recent as 2 weeks ago, one of our clients was abducted by her husband. 6 men came and whisked her away, and she disappeared for weeks. We thought she was dead. And these are the kind of cases that we have. And when we talk to the police, they say things like, "Oh, it's a family matter. After all, he is her husband," and we have to point out, this is abduction, this is kidnap, which section of the penal code. So I think the weakness in the legal system is not the legal system itself, because we do have the laws, we have the welfare, we have the courts, we have the police, but really it's the attitude of the police personnel. They see domestic violence as a not so serious crime, and even when a woman, like the woman who was kidnapped, abducted, 2 weeks ago, she's now free. She managed to, get out of that. But they see it as being, well, she's with the husband, so she's safe. Even though she's got an interim protection order, the employer made a report, social workers made a report, NGOs made a report, the family made a report, everybody's making a report to say this man is being abusive. We are of course going to we're going to basically go to the Bukit Aman and ask them to investigate as to why investigation was a bit sluggish here.
And that's an especially frightening attitude, I think, mostly because these are very big events that we're talking about, abductions, police with rifles, it's not small matters.
Exactly.
So how much support does the WAO get from the government or elsewhere?
Well, one of the good things about Women's Aid is that we are able to the doors do open for us, and the police have a very healthy respect for us. In fact, last year we had a very frank dialogue with the head of the CID from Bukit Aman, and the people on the top, even the IGP, they understand it, they get it. The problem is the filtering down. So we do get a lot of help from them, but only in a crisis situation. For instance, again, last year, there was a perpetrator who was standing beside me outside the refuge gate and screaming his head off, and he wasn't even arrested or detained. So I called up, somebody in Bukit Aman, because I happened to have the handphone number, and only then petrol cars came and took him away. So they're helpful when we ask them for help. But our challenge is to make sure that the police or the welfare department, and the welfare department and the courts, they all run efficiently without having to have had intervention. It should run smoothly, because Women's Aid cannot be everywhere. So I think they are helpful in a crisis situation, but what we want is for it to run smoothly. That protection and the safety of the woman must be at the center, at the heart of any domestic violence protocol. And I can tell you, after 30 years of doing this work, much has to be said about the attitudes of the police personnel and welfare officers. It can be improved. There are some very good police officers. Unfortunately, there are also quite a number of police officers who still see it as a domestic affair.
Everybody has to be on the same page, I guess, in terms of protection and respect.
Yeah, there should be a protocol. I mean, even though you may have your personal views about, we've got women who come and tell us that, the investigating officer said, he looks like a good husband, but come on, give him a chance. That is not your duty. You're not a counselor. You're not a marriage counselor. You have not been given training for X number of years to do marriage counseling and save marriages. That is not your work. You're a police officer. You have to investigate a crime. You have to ensure that citizens are safe. That's your work. So, but unfortunately, it gets muddied by the fact that they have all these personal prejudices about, you want a divorce, right? You must be a bad woman. You must be a bad wife. So there's still a lot of tribal prejudices about women who leave their husbands.
Thank you, Ivy.